Welcome to the Lovecars on the Grid podcast, your global motorsport roundup with me, Tiff, Needell and Paul Woodman.
Welcome to Lovecars on the Grid, your global motorsport podcast roundup. What a weekend, because Formula One is back. Well, kind of. It's back with testing in Bahrain. We looked this week also at a thrilling finish on Formula One. Cape Town, South Africa. World Superbikes in Australia, down under. NASCAR in Fontana. And then we'll have a look at the week ahead, which, of course, is the official start to the Formula One season. But, Tiff, I want to start off with another RIP. It's a bit of a sad way to start a positive and happy podcast. But Slim Borgudd, I think you...
Yes. Yeah, I raced against him in Formula 3 and stuff. So Slim, quite a character, Slim was. And he managed to get himself a few Grand Prix drives. And he was very good, but never brilliant. And, of course, he had this Abba backing, because he was a drummer for Abba. Well, they always say they never spent any money. Apparently, they just let him put Abba on the car that would help him find more sponsorship. But, he was good. He was good. And then, of course, he was a star of track racing. When the Formula One world didn't quite work out for him, he went to the European track racing and had some great battles with Steve Parrish, of course, who was Britain's funniest, most favourite motorbiking truck driver.
Have you ever tried the truck racing? Have you ever tried that at all?
No, I tested one once in the early days and weird. So I couldn't handle that sort of 100 mile an hour when they run out of speed. That's it. You got a speed limit of 100 miles an hour. Oh, that's ridiculous.
Big old beast. So RIP to Slim, and of course, like you said, he was the drummer for Abba, which is because there's also Rick Parfitt Jr. He's a musician. There's a few musicians in motorsport. Yeah. Right, let's kick off. Let's kick off with some news first. What news have you got? I got a couple of things. I got one really interesting. Interesting bit of news. We'll come on to the good juicy stuff in a minute, but Haas have saved themselves $250,000 on distribution, and they've gone from having a 6 or 7 or 8 seat pitwall. Those couple of things that they have with all the engineers.
Three seater.
So it will fit inside a.
But I always thought a lot of that stuff looks obscene. To save $250,000. It just shows how wastage the Formula One have come into it. I think this is where the cap has come as a good time, because it's made them wake up to this fact that they are just bouncing money in all directions. For every time I see a race, if Formula E's is bad, and they always go to the garage, don't they? There's about 8 people all lined up looking at their screens, monitoring the power. And I mean, I'd cut out all car to garage transmissions. They'd have no feedback at all. Let the driver have a little voltmeter on his thing, or battery charge like we have in our road cars. So I think it's brilliant that they cut it down to just 3, and you probably don't need those on your pit wall. Saved
not on the actual wall, because of course it's like air traffic control these days. It's not at the airport; it's off somewhere else. Same with VAR in football; it's off somewhere else, so the data can go other places. And Gunter also, I saw a brilliant little clip of Gunter. What a lovely character he is. He just seems like a super nice guy. He was doing an interview, and the interviewer said, "Oh, sorry, about the F-bomb there. I hope our audience didn't mind." And Gunter was so confused when they stopped doing the interview. He said, "What did I say?" He said, "Well, you dropped the F-bomb." He said, "No, I didn't." He said, I like hugging the drivers, not effing the drivers." His accent.
I didn't hear that one.
It might have been an old clip, but we will come on to Drive to Survive as well, because of course Gunter is a bit of a hero on Drive to Survive. But what have you got in the news then, Tiff, Needell?
The greedy bloody group of 10, the greedy clique, they're now saying that instead of £200 million to enter Formula One, they think it should be $600 million. And apparently one Formula One team's person said, and that was the minimum number mentioned in their meeting. So now if Andretti want to come in and join the club, they've got to give them compensation of, what's that, £60 million per team.
I've been thinking about this a lot. And it was your idea, and I don't mind crediting you with it when you have an idea. They don't come around very often. But why not 26 teams? Why not 26? And this 600 million, what a ridiculous figure. Well, no. Encourage them. Get 26 teams.
No, but they're going to lose money.
Sorry,
they're going to spread
teams.
Their greedy pot of gold wider. An 11th,
26 cars on the grid, because it would be phenomenal. It would be so a good thing for the sport, in my opinion.
But the other news is that Alpha Tauri Red Bull might be selling Alpha Tauri, so Andretti, that might be another way in. But then the rumour is that they'd say it'd be a lot more than 600 million to buy Alpha Tauri's rights.
Well, there's another lad called Calvin Ho. He's a Hong Kong billionaire, and I think a financier, young and rich, and just really annoying. How what went wrong with us, Tiff? But he's looking to come into Formula One in 2026, and the easy route, of course, is to buy another team. So maybe he'll be looking at Alpha Tauri, but or putting his own team in. So, but he's not doing it for. He is a Formula One fan, but he's not doing it because he's a fan of Formula One. He's doing it because he wants to make money. Apparently, I don't think there's many teams that make money.
Do now they grow. But the other thing about costs of racing, I think it's brilliant that Haas. As you say, there's still every Formula One team's got a team of engineers back at base on monitors, watching everything and coming up with race strategy. But it is nice to downsize of their pit box. But the other thing they want to downsize, and they've been talking about this for years, these tyre warmers. I mean, again, they come up with the cost of them, the cost of transporting them, all the effort. And everyone keeps on saying, let's dump tyre warmers. And it's come up for many years on the trot. And it keeps on getting thrown back. The drivers don't like it. And apparently there are going to be some tests after the British Grand Prix at Silverstone. And this is the next date. And then there'll be a vote afterwards. But there's no way the drivers are going to vote.
They're not going to say, yes, I want to go out on cold tyres, please.
That might make me life harder. I don't want my drive harder. And then I had a Twitter saying, Zanardi lost his legs because he didn't have tyre warmers because he lost control accelerating out the pit lane, which is fair enough. But I think you can lose control with hot tyres. I don't think that's going to be a be all. It just would add so much to the racing in my mind. That the pit stop would be more important, and you might be less keen to have a pit stop. So the strategy would be more interesting, and the better driver would get to speed quicker, and therefore the talent of the driver would be more prominent. This is what we want. We want the driver's talent to be more prominent. And
you know what it'll cut out? Something that we both despise, that silly jump in with 1 lap to go to get the fastest lap in the extra 1 point.
Yes, that would stop. Good point. Yes. Yes.
So in terms of liveries, it was lovely to see the cars in Bahrain. It's a bit of a nothing track, really, but it was lovely to see the cars in Bahrain. And I think people are with you on the Ferrari. They think that we discussed this last week. If you haven't heard it, please listen, have a catch up. We discussed it. It seems to be the Ferrari seems to be one of the most popular, but it just seems to be the same old Ferrari.
But certainly the same old order. Yeah. By the way, we both lost our bets. I think I morally won. We said who'd be quickest. It doesn't matter about tyres and weight. We all know that. You went for Sainz in the Ferrari. Well, the quickest Ferrari was Leclerc, but they were the 4th quickest car. I went for the quickest lap being George in the Mercedes, but in fact, the Mercedes was 2nd fastest. And Lewis did the quickest lap time in the Mercedes. Because, of course, guess who was quickest? And it's not looking good for this year to come. Because I've done the times for each team, the quickest time. Okay, they might not have had soft tyres. They might have been running empty and all that. But forgetting all that, just the facts of the figures was that Red Bull were quickest. 0.34 quicker than Mercedes, which is a lot of time in Formula One these days. And that was with Perez driving it. So Max didn't get the quickest time for Red Bull. So
because Max purposely didn't go on soft tyres. He didn't go to set any fast lap, and he was unbelievably confident after it. So what's testing told us? What's the
well, Mercedes got the lap time, but again, they weren't happy, and a lot of people watching the cars, they couldn't get on the throttle quick enough, and they didn't like the handling. They had an imbalance. No porpoising. Nobody had any porpoising. I think the bumps seem to have gone because they've slightly changed the ride height of the skirts. So Mercedes were looking all right on results, but not on sort of the mood in the camp wasn't good. But they were, as I said, they were 0.3 slower than Mercedes. Alfa Romeo came out 3rd on the overall time list with Valtteri Bottas. So again, this is why we never take too much. But I always think it does indicate, which teams are having a better feel that they let their drivers go out on the softer tyres. Ferrari 4th with Leclerc. And then Yuki Tsunoda 5th overall in the times, Alpha Tauri. So I think it just gets you in a mood. It's good. Haas were up there 6th with K-Mag. Alonso 7th with the Aston Martins. But the biggest team, I think, worst news of all the teams is McLaren. Yeah. And McLaren down 8th overall with Lando's lap time. His lap time was nearly 2 seconds slower than the Red Bull time at the top of the times. it makes you wonder how they build these new cars that they can't seem to change. If you get a bad car at the beginning of the year, you seem to be stuck with it. And they all talked about their aero efficiency targets weren't met. And that they used to have about 2 seasons ago, 2021, they had a very quick kind of straight line, but not enough downforce. And obviously there was an obvious thing. You get more downforce, you get more drag. So you're always trying to find that aero efficiency. You're fast and straight line like Red Bull is and got good downforce, which Red Bull has. That is where they're so good, because they've got the downforce with minimal drag. And apparently they're saying they've got a cure. Now, why they apparently knew before they went to Bahrain that they had this aero imbalance. They missed their targets, but they can't change it until Baku, 5th race of the season. They're already saying we're stuck with this, but we can cure it come Baku.
Wow.
Because they haven't got their own wind tunnel. They use Toyota's wind tunnel in Cologne, so it's not exactly down the road like many teams. Not every team's got their own wind tunnel. But it seems like, how can you be so off target when you had your targets and then not be able to cure it until April almost? And it's just very worrying for them. Because I think, Mercedes, we look at Mercedes, all the aero tunnel they've got and all the backup and the engineers, they took all year virtually, didn't they, to get last year's horrible car to be reasonably competitive. So I fear for McLaren this year. I can't see them turning it around. And that's really a shame for Lando and, of course, the new boy, Piastri.
You would think that it'd be a bit more dynamic. It just seems to be very slow and reactive, doesn't it? But you think they'd be much more proactive and certainly be able to get that done within. And McLaren not having their own wind tunnel really shocks me. You're building the fastest.
I think they've got one on track. They're all trying to build them. But mind you, as quick as they're building it, the wind tunnels, the FIA banning wind tunnels. You use them less and less. But
it's like but everything nowadays. I mean, I'm gonna get jumped on for this, but like an airplane is everything is we rely on computers with everything we build nowadays. So like airplanes, you can't get a wind tunnel for an airplane. You can for certain parts.
Yeah.
So I would imagine they would be able to do quite a lot on the computer, but very slow. Come on, guys. If you need some help, we'll get a bit of fag packet out and we'll draw on the back of that for you.
We'll get a quick go. Alpine were all of them. They were at the bottom of the timesheets. I mean, Williams were 9th, and I love Williams. They went out first 2 days. They ran more laps than anybody else. They were in the top 6. They probably went for the low fuel soft tires before anyone else. And I just think if I was a team manager, I'd always do that. It's just good for team morale, feel good factor.
Yeah.
And they ended up back virtually on the bottom in 9th place. And actually, funny enough, their quickest time was done by their rookie, was done by the American Sargent. Logan Sargent did the quickest Williams time on day 2, which put them ahead of Alpine. If you took the day 3 result, then Alpine were 9th and Williams were 10th, was Alexander Albon's lap time. But again, feel good factor for Sargent. I was the quickest Williams driver at the tests.
Absolutely.
Maybe Albon might have had full tanks all the time. Anyway, But Alpine is the other one that's a worrying thing. And they did the classic, whenever you're really bad off, they did lots of laps. So they just said, well, we never went for soft tires. We never went for low fuel. Well, why not?
Yeah.
To make your mechanics happy that are doing all the work, to make the team. Yeah. Why not just empty the fuel out?
Put one in there, son. Get a banker in there.
I know. And they said,
and make your fans feel good, make your sponsors feel good, make everybody feel good. You go from there and you get confidence. And the other teams on the grid are going to be thinking, bloody hell, last week Alpine put in a lap of X, Y, or Z. It's only got to be a good thing, surely. I think the biggest shock was...
Well, also, because they just to finish Alpine, they also said their quotes afterwards when they said they wouldn't go for a lap time. And they've got a nice upgrade ready for the race weekend. So after all this year of designing their new car, they've got an upgrade for 1 week's time. Why couldn't they have got that there for the main test? It's amazing sometimes what these teams say. So you say...
No, the whole Aston Martin thing. Lance Stroll injured himself, of course.
Of course, we've got that debate coming up. Yeah, so
Lance Stroll injured himself on a bike. He's okay, but he's hurt his wrist. He's doing some sim work this week to see if he's going to be available for the weekend. Now, the big story of the weekend was, so Djokovic stood in for the testing, but the big story was, will Sebastian Vettel come and come back out of retirement and race? Forget this amazing rookie that's just come into Formula One as their standing driver, as their reserve driver. let's get the old guy that's retired that doesn't want anything to do with Formula One anymore. Admittedly, some career that was. What was all that about? What was their thinking? And
lots of Twitters. A lot of Twitters were saying, "Brilliant, let's get wonderful." And I was tweeting, "Dave, what do you want?" Because I hate these kids not getting their breaks. For a Formula 2 champion, I always had that idea an FIA would sponsor the Formula 2 champion and buy a seat at a Haas or an Alpine at the back for every year. So you always had the Formula 2 champion on the grid. And I think it's wonderful if Drugovic can make that one Grand Prix start. So I'm hoping Lance's wrist will be a bit injured.
I
actually did a tweet. I did a tweet poll. In fact, it was after they said it wouldn't be Vettel. I said, who would you rather have, a Formula 2 champion or an old champion? And luckily, 70% said they'd rather have the young boy than to see Vettel come back for one more race. Pointless.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And conspicuous by his absence, I should say. Who wasn't there that lives in the Middle East?
Who wasn't there that lives in the Middle East?
Yeah,
probably Bin Slade. Was it Bin? Mm-hmm. Bin's binned himself again.
He has. That's sending a message, isn't it? I mean, he probably a 45-minute flight away from Bahrain and decided not to go because there's a big fallout there with him. So it's exciting anyway. I mean,
looking ahead, it looks like a Red Bull weekend ahead of us. Ferrari, maybe great race pace. Ferrari's still good. I think there's not going to be much change in the pecking order. The Mercedes are starting on the front foot if they can. I think because with their background of engineers, they know what the problems were. Maybe they can spend this week, on the simulators. That's what they'll be doing. They'll be going round and round on simulators all week now. So it could be Mercedes. We could have that 6 cars battling for the lead, and
I think 2 cars battling for the lead and 4 cars battling for second, third, fourth, fifth. It's Mercedes and Ferrari,
Alpha Tauri.
I think Red Bull are out there on their own, but who knows? Let's see what happens next week. It's going to be super exciting anyway. Can we go to some proper Hollywood drama? Can we go to Drive to Survive?
Love a bit of that. Love a bit of that. Well, you can go to Drive to Survive because I'm not going to waste any more of my life. I think I watched 2 episodes of the first series and that's it. I'm not bothering with all this. I mean, they cheat the whole thing. They just create the stories and use bits from different races, don't they? I don't know. That's exactly right. Proof of that.
You're exactly right. Well, I've got proof straight from the horse's mouth. Lando Norris, who was interviewed and on a much more successful podcast than ours, he was interviewed and said that this is ridiculous because his audio says, he's forcing me off the road. He's forcing me off the road. But it's from a completely different race. He said, look at the room I've got. Look at the room I've got. This is Hollywood. So I haven't watched it. I will not watch it. I'm going to boycott it. In fact, I went off it on season, a bit like you. I watched 1 and 2. 3 I watched a bit of. 4 I couldn't watch because of the whole Abu Dhabi thing. And now, not a chance. It's Hollywood. It's not for fans like us.
Drama. It's like the Formula 1's Panto season. It's like, let's make up some stories and make it look good.
Yeah. So there we go. Drive to Survive. If you have watched it, let us know. But I'm not going to watch it. So you can let me know.
Also, Formula 2 and Formula 3 this weekend. Lots of British interest in there. We've got Ollie Berman coming out in Formula 2. We've got Formula 3s. So lots going on this weekend, not just the Formula 1.
Okay.
I'll probably enjoy the Formula 2 and Formula 2 races more than the Formula 1 race.
Let's head to South Africa and another Formula, which is you don't hear much of this, but it's Formula E, of course, the electric cars.
But it was. I have to say. I'm still not sold on Formula E, but it was probably the best Formula E track and crowd. Had a big 25,000 crowd. But when you watch some of the grandstands, and because they got so many banners and barriers, I think the cars were probably hidden behind the concrete wall half the time from half the seats. But it was a brilliant track because it was fast. The drivers really respected it. There was some nasty bumps in different places. All the chicanes were wall to wall. None of these stupid curb hopping. No track limits anywhere because it was just wall to wall and quick. A real driver's challenge. And there was dramas all over the place because there's bumpiness. The Mahindra cars had some suspension failures. So we started with a drama because they withdrew their cars, and the ABD team that have the same powertrain, the Mahindra powertrain, they also withdraw. I presume they make their own rear suspension because I don't know how much of the cars are individual designs. They've always got the same monocoques and stuff. So we were down to 18 from 22 before qualifying. And in qualifying, in fact, on the Friday already on the bumpy turn 8 and 9, this really quick left-hander. Sebastian Buemi lost it and planted it in the wall big time. And in qualifying, Eduardo Montaro did the same thing. And Sam Bird, next car on the scene, no yellow flags apparently, also lost it. We think he was almost already losing it before any flags could have come out because he was so near to Montaro. And he slammed it into the wall, couldn't start because they couldn't repair the car for the race. So we'd lost, 5 cars from the grid. But it was a great track. And the end, it was exciting at the end, but I'll come to it in a minute because it was exciting again for the artificial blooming stuff that Formula E does. It was Antonio Felix da Costa that came through from 11th on the grid. Porsche power again, because Porsches have won 1, 2, 3, now 4 of the 5 races. The Porsche power plant seems to be the one, the drivetrain seems to be the one to have. The championship leader, Pascal Wehrlein, also the other, his Porsche teammate, he took out Buemi. Poor old Buemi crashes in practice and then got taken out in the race. And again, this goes back to those no rear brakes, this drive-by-wire computer decides how much regen, how much the rear's braking. But Wehrlein, first lap championship leader, just arrives front wheels locked up at the end of the back straight, slams in the back of Buemi, who was also almost out braking himself. So that was a bit of drama. And then Jean-Eric Verne, who he battled so well in the Penske, won the last round. He's great at these races. He's doing it for years and years. And he came out, he was leading the way. But then Da Costa was in front. And it goes to this picking up your boost activation zones. So Da Costa's out front leading. And he had to do pick up one more activation. So Verne was back a bit. And all the excitement seems to be this blooming activation zones. It makes the races not processional because every time you go to activation zone, you lose a place and then you use the extra power boost that you've got for 2 minutes, overtaking the person you've let by to take up the activation. They're almost pointless. But anyway, he missed the flipping thing. You have to go through with all 4 wheels over 3 sensors. I'm not quite sure how it all works. So he went offline. So Verne overtook him then, didn't he? And not then. Verne was then on his rear gearbox. So now Da Costa, the next 2 laps, still had to do it because you have to do these activation zones. So next time he did it, he went into them and got it. But he's now behind Verne. He's now got the extra power because he's been in the activation zone. Anyway, but it did mean that he caught Verne up with 2 laps to go, and they had this amazing dice, and he did this most incredible overtake around the outside. But it was while Verne was doing the lift and coast to get more power back, so he was almost caught by surprise that Da Costa could stay on the throttle because he'd gotten a bit more power. So it was exciting, but only exciting because they have to go offline like a kiddies game, computer game, to pick up their
Mario Kart.
I know. So, but it was amazing back in the third as well. Because again, you'll always get someone. It's a bit like the DRS trains, so they get in Formula One. You'll end up with someone that sort of got up to third place by using too much power, but now has to back off to do the last 3 laps. I think it was Nick Cassidy that was the one in trouble, and he was backing up. The whole rest of the grid was now on his gearbox. There was also, it looks exciting. That's the point. If you don't know what's going on, to Joe Public setting the grandstand, you say, well, look at this racing, blooming hell, They don't understand that the person in the front of this pack is just backing off everywhere so he can get to the end. But there was a clash with Sacha Fenestros, the Nissan driver was on pole position. He was running full. He got third, I think, briefly, and then, according to him, he got taken out by Cassidy on the last lap, but it wasn't on camera. So it was exciting. It was action. It was beautiful setting, great looking track, no silly chicanes, no curb jumping. So, in fact, in the end, Verne's now up to third in the championship. Despite crashing out the first lap, Wehrlein still leads the championship. And Jake Dennis, our British driver, he's still second in the championship, but he had another miserable weekend because he got done, so as in Formula One, for low tyre pressures. Drive-through penalty for having too low a tyre pressure, Mr. Dennis, in your Andretti team. Slap hands. So he was on his own at the back and finished 13th, but still stays second in the championship from Verne and Da Costa. So it was fun, good racing, and good, just looked good.
Good.
Even though if you're in the know, it's a bit artificial.
I like it because Nikki Shields and Emma, what's her name? Oh, what's it?
Emma Raducanu.
She doesn't.
I don't
know.
know.
She doesn't listen anyway, so we're okay. Crikey.
Yeah, Nikki was out there.
Oh,
which other girl?
Emma,
the girl that does Formula One.
Our friend Emma. Anyway, it'll come back.
You're getting worse than me. You are getting worse than me.
Worse.
If I haven't noted the name down, I'll start a story and I'll forget and the name one.
Right, let's go to World Superbikes and hide my blushes because I can't remember who Emma is.
The other big race of the weekend was World Superbikes down at amazing Phillip Island.
Emma
I didn't see it on telly.
Emma Walsh, of course.
I thought you meant the Formula One presenter. That's the South African girl that does Formula One. She was down doing Formula E this weekend, along with the tall, lanky bloke that's going to be our new Radio 2 DJ, Vernon. Vernon was down there. Those are presenters. We need that job down in Cape Town, having a fun party.
I know.
Also, I wouldn't mind going to World Superbikes. I said last week that Bradley Ray, the British champion, was joining, but I cocked up there because he's not joining until they come to Europe. So he's missing the two away trip races down under. So we thought it would just be the Bautista Ray Razgatlioglu battles all starting again. But it only went well for Bautista. He won all three of the Ducati. Amazing start to the season for him. Jonathan Ray picked up only 1 second place.
That's super unusual, isn't it, for someone to win all three races?
Well, not so much of those, because it's just those three drivers has been riders that have been dominating. But Razgatlioglu, he only managed 2 third places. So Ray's second in the championship now. Razgatlioglu 6th. The Italian Andrea Locatelli is up in second in the points after the first round.
Isn't it funny when he did a couple of years ago his first sort of season on the circuit, and everyone thought he's just going to be this unbelievable sensation, blow everyone away for his whole career, and he hasn't really found his feet yet, has he?
What, Locatelli?
No, Turk. You can say his name. The
Razgatlioglu.
Yes, thank you.
I thought he was going to be in. I thought he was going to be in MotoGP this year. That's what all the stories were, but no, he hasn't got there. A quick word, World Supersports has supported the Formula 2 Championship, you might call it. We're out there. We don't normally have many Brits in it. But John McPhee, who, of course, we supported so much, our Moto3 veteran, has finally escaped Moto3. I think he had to leave this year because he's been in it for too long. He got a podium on his first race for Kawasaki, and he's 5th in the points. So a big up for John McPhee.
Good stuff. So is that it from Down Under?
Yeah, down under, over the pond, of course, to NASCAR, the round 2, Fontana. It was the last race at Fontana. It's a real old, beaten-up track. It's getting a bit rutty and bumps, and they haven't raced there for a whole year. It's being sold. They're selling half the land for $10 billion, and they're rebuilding a short track in the other half they've got left. So it's one of the great old NASCAR tracks. It's been a favourite for many drivers. And this is how NASCAR works. I love it. So the snow came, didn't it? They're down in Los Angeles. I don't know where it's near Los Angeles or San Francisco. Anyway, it was snowed off, qualifying, practice, nothing. So they create the grid out of your results at Daytona and previous qualifying sessions. And they all rolled out on Sunday, having not done a single lap of this 2-mile circuit that hasn't been raced on for a year. And they go green, 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 and off they go at 200 miles an hour. And it's amazing. The dust and crap was coming. Obviously, they'd swept the track as much as they could with the sweepers, but there's a lot of dust cloud going on. And these drivers just adapt to the circuit, and then you quickly see who's adapting better by coming forwards and who's going backwards. And they go 4 wide. It's a really wide, not very steeply banked 2-mile oval. Great racing going on. Quite a sight.
Fontana's near LA. It's
LA, was it?
Yeah. It's in San Bernardino Valley.
Where they had snow last weekend.
I've been there when there's been ice in 1989. Actually.
Was it cold?
Yeah, it was really super cold, but Ontario, I think, is there. But, yeah.
But it was quite a yellow flag free race. It wasn't the most exciting race towards the end because Kyle Busch came out in the lead, got into the lead with quite a long way to go, and there was no more yellows, so he won by about 2 or 3 seconds. Kyle Busch, I said, didn't I? Always get mixed up with Kyle's. But it was a big day because Kyle Busch has been with Toyota for I don't know how many years, the Joe Gibbs team, and his famous M&M sponsored Toyota. And the M&Ms withdrew, so Bush didn't have the money, and Bush was a bit out of favour. He's quite a moody bloke, and the public always like to boo Bush. But he picked up this drive on a Chevrolet this year with the Richard Childress team, which is it's a B team for Chevrolet, really, because they're not the main Chevrolet team, but they are obviously very good. So he won the race, and I think people even liked it because he actually beat a Richard Petty record. Richard Petty seemed to hold every record in NASCAR. This was actually the 19th year on the trot that he's made it that Busch has won a race. So he's won a race in every year for the last 19 years.
That's incredible, isn't it? You'd have never imagined that. It would never happened in Formula One, for example.
But the other Richard Petty record is a small way behind because I think that made Busch's 61st win, which put him 9th on the table of all-time NASCAR top division winners. But Richard Petty has still hold the record for he did 200 wins.
Wow, that's some difference.
I think the guy second in the champion's got about 101. So he's like 100 ahead of second best, and that will be they always say records will never be broken. That record will never be broken.
It won't be broken because you just won't get that longevity, that tenure any longer.
You never get a dominant. You never get a car as dominant anymore with with racing, with the balance of powers and stuff. You'll never get a car that Petty had. Obviously, he was the best driver, but he had the best car for so many seasons.
Fantastic.
The other Kyle, my Kyle,
Larson,
engine went very early on. I went to bed. I didn't watch the end of the race. Larson had gone. I was knackered. I had a long weekend. But I watch enough drama. The NASCAR will always entertain. So that's the other thing on Twitter. Because, the overtaking was non-stop on this. I'd love to be able to add up how many overtakes happened on that NASCAR race. Because the people coming from the back. In fact, Kyle Busch that won the race got caught for speeding coming into one of his pit stops and went to the back of the field. So this is what I love about NASCAR. If you get the car right, you can come from the back of the field. You can come from 2 laps down and win the races.
It's so close when you watch it, and they're literally pushing each other. It's just incredible, really, how close they get sometimes. But
no, with me on Twitter having another go at overtaking in Formula One, and I was having a go at Ross Brawn last week because these regulations aren't working, and we're stuck with it until 2026. And they come out, overtaking was up last year, Tiff, to 31% from 29% or 33%. I don't know. But all they quote is the total number of overtakes. I asked for someone on Twitter, can you break it down into stuck in the pits, DRS overtakes, tyres gone off overtakes, but nobody could break it down. I hate people using useless statistics. You
don't hate them. You just dislike this useless statistics.
I don't hate the person.
Yeah.
I don't hate the person.
Yeah.
I don't hate them. I hate the use of useless statistics, which prove nothing.
So, speaking of useless statistics, what do you think of the new Sky Sports lineup for Formula One? Are you? Is
there a new one? I'm not aware of the newness of it. Well, could you update me on the newness of Formula One?
I'm not going to comment on Sky Sports commentary for testing because they've got to do so much filling of.
I didn't look at any of it. Did you watch? I didn't look at a single. Couldn't be bothered.
Yeah, I did. I watched some of it, but it'd be interesting for the race weekend because, of course, no Johnny Herbert, no Paul di Resta. We
mentioned this before. We knew that. I knew that. It's nothing more than that. You haven't got any stunning news for me.
No stunning news, but what I do want, because next week we have got Formula One Bahrain, we've got IndyCar St. Petersburg, more World Superbikes in Indonesia, I believe, and NASCAR in Viva Las Vegas. But what I do want from you before we go, Tiff Needell, is your prediction.
Talk about IndyCar a bit first. You can't just glance over IndyCar and St. Petersburg. You must tell everybody, make sure that after the Formula One, you watch. You've got your Sky Sports. Don't not watch IndyCar. St. Petersburg, an amazing street track. Not that good for overtaking because it's got one long straight. But we've got, of course, Jamie Chadwick making a debut in the Formula 2 series, which I think is also televised on Sky Sports F1. So we got the 2 Brits, Louis Foster, the Formula 3 champion, the Pro 200 champion from last year, and Jamie Chadwick having a go.
I hope he does well. Bravely. I really, really hope he does well.
St. Pete is the toughest of tracks. That's what I was going to go back to. Because when you go on board, watch the IndyCar, and you see the workload going through the steering wheel without power steering, those IndyCars. This is the first race of the year, the toughest physically, and they will end that race, the winner, everybody else, knackered. And I think sometimes I like to see that. And this was the old Formula One, Senna and Mansell drenched in sweat, collapsing on podiums. Whereas now they just jump out their cars, don't they? Because it's so easy to operate these blooming things. So it's a really, really tough track, St. Petersburg. So do watch IndyCar.
Good.
Now you can
Formula
continue.
One. Tell me. So I'm going for Max George Carlos.
Max Verstappen.
Max George Carlos. But
you giving me a whole top three?
That's my top three. Yeah. Who are you going for?
Max George Carlos. It's obviously going to be Max. Won't be Perez. Perez will be six probably. And I think I'm going for Lewis second, Leclerc third.
Okay, that's it.
Oh, George, and George is in there. So I'm going a Max. No, yeah, a Max.
Lewis,
Charles.
Okay. So I'm doing a bit of reverse psychology myself. I want Lewis. I'm a big Lewis fan. But if I say George, then maybe Lewis will beat him, because every time I say Lewis, George beats Lewis. That's my thinking anyway. So right,
let's start planning how to buy Alpha Tauri. The Lovecars go Formula One.
I tell you, Calvin Ho, he's our man. Let's just get in with Calvin Ho.
Okay. You can be the PR man. I'll be the driver coach.
Multi-billionaire. I don't think you're going to be able to coach them that much these days, Tiff, because the cars have changed a little bit since you bought it. On that note, thanks for joining. We'll see you next week.
Cheers all. Bye.
See you guys.